from each happily ever after, every wish upon a star. Let's break down the movies that shaped who we are, from memory lane to now and everything in between. The most famous of films to the ones we've never seen. Decade by decade, all the times we laughed and cried, and with a little pixie dust, they will all take flight, reliving the feelings, and we're trying our very best. And if they mean the same to you, please be our guest. So hop aboard, we would love to have you as we hang with a certain mouth, the whole gang too. If you love nostalgia stuff, we hope this does the trick. Thanks for joining us as we deep dive the magic.
Hi, and welcome back to the Deep Diving the Magic podcast. I'm KJ.
And I'm Jeffrey. And we have made it to the 70th episode, the 70th deep dive. That's amazing. That's just amazing. 70 episodes.
Did you think we would get that far?
No. But for our 70th episode, we are diving into a film from March 25th, 1964. The 70th Disney feature-length film is a live-action film entitled The Misadventures of Merlin Jones. Before I talk too much about it, would you like to start us off with a synopsis about The Misadventures of Merlin Jones?
Merlin Jones, resident genius at Midvale College, inadvertently gets into a string of scrapes, both in college and with the law, much to the distress of his long-suffering girlfriend and the local district judge.
Yeah, a string is correct, because this is definitely multiple films put together into one. I don't know if you have any opening thoughts or anything, or any tidbits, but this is the return of Tommy Kirk and Annette Funicello. Mm-hmm. They are love interest once again.
I enjoyed how it opened up with a cute little song about being in love with Merlin Jones, mm-hmm. and little cartoons singing it.
Correct.
I enjoyed the opening. Yeah. I thought it was cute.
Did you find any facts or anything, or do you want to just go ahead and dive right in?
I don't think I looked for any facts. Tommy Kirk's back.
Almost at the end. Almost at the end of our friend Tommy Kirk. I actually think that there's only one more after this, and he had to be rehired for it.
Well,
because I think it's a sequel of this one.
Okay.
But whatever. All right. So you want to dive right in?
Sure.
All right. So, like you mentioned, there was a stop motion animated opening credits with a school song about Merlin Jones. Mm-hmm. This is Midvale College, so not Medford College like the last other films. This is Midvale College.
Mm-hmm. Do you think they kept it with something so they could continue to use?
I mean, I don't know why they didn't just keep it the same college, but yeah, who knows?
The same, like
it's like that. It's like that picture there, that Pixar thing now, where they all use like the room number or whatever in all their films. But we start off with like there's like a football star who looks way too old to be in this movie, but whatever. Mm-hmm. The football star, he is asking out Annette Funicello's character, whose name is Jennifer. He's asking her to the Letterman's ball, but he's upset that she already has a date with Merlin Jones. Mm-hmm. And then we see Merlin Jones, and he's carrying a football helmet. Mm-hmm. So they're like, "Oh, you're trying out for the football team? You're trying out for the football team?" But no, it cuts to the next scene where Merlin Jones is wearing like this like experimental helmet. Mm-hmm. It's got like a bunch of like wires and stuff jumping out of it. And Jennifer is very upset because he's an hour late to pick her up. So clearly he learned all his stuff from like the guy from the Flubber films. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and watch our previous episodes.
Do you think he would miss his own wedding?
I mean, he was late to pick up his girlfriend by an hour.
Yeah.
But whatever. So Merlin Jones is testing his brainwaves with this fancy helmet. Mm-hmm.
He has it connected to an EEG.
Mm-hmm. So it's like writing as it's going. He's testing his brainwaves through dancing, through kissing, and stuff like that.
Jennifer, not just anybody.
Yeah, it's just him and Jennifer. he would never kiss somebody else. Spoiler for later. But so he's testing his brainwaves, and he decides that he's going to wear this contraption while he drives home.
Well, actually, before he does that, he wants her to wear it, and he finally talks her into wearing it. And in the name of science, he wants to kiss her and see what her EEG looks like. And it just ends up a flat line. And he was like, "Is that all that I mean to you? Like, I don't mean anything to you." And then she was like, "You mean a lot to me." And then she like looks down and she's like, "It's unplugged."
Yeah.
So I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
But then he decided, like Jeff said, he was gonna drive it because she kept saying, "You need to take me."
Yep. So he's going to wear this while they drive to like pick up his brainwaves driving. But he gets pulled over.
But how would it work when it's driving during that time and day? Because it's not like he had the whole machine with him plugged up to it.
Wow. I mean, was the machine ever plugged in the first place? Batteries.
Yeah, but how is it recording? Like the recording part of it was not in the car with him
How do you know?
because it was huge.
So was the car. So whatever, he gets pulled over.
Anyway.
And he refuses to sign the ticket. Jennifer won't let him sign the ticket. They end up getting a date in front of the judge. But then they end up going to see the judge, and he's again still wearing this helmet, and he's trying to explain the whole situation about how it's for science in front of this judge. But it appears that Merlin has quite the history of traffic disturbances. And then no matter how much Jennifer could stick up for the judge or stick up for Merlin, he ends up getting his license suspended for 10 days.
Yeah.
Anything else I missed on that? Okay. So then the next scene, we see that he's back in the lab and he's running more tests.
Still has this helmet on.
Yep, he has this helmet on, but while he's running the test this time, the machine like starts to go haywire and it's sparking and it's
so I thought it was when the guy flipped a switch or something.
Yeah, I mean maybe the I don't know.
Maybe he
like,
just told him to turn it off.
Yeah, like the professor was there, and all of a sudden it starts to go haywire. It's like shooting sparks all over the place. So the
essentially shocking him.
Yeah, and the professor has to come and save him, basically turn it off. But then the professor is thinking silently to himself about the situation, and miraculously Merlin can hear what the professor is saying. So now Merlin can now read minds.
But he doesn't know he's reading minds. He thinks that these thoughts are being said out loud.
Correct.
So he's responding to them.
Which confuses the professor. The professor was like talking about like a date with a lady and stuff.
And he's like, whatever you do, don't tell anybody about that because they're not going to like it if you know. Especially not Jennifer.
So he then goes to the library to get away from everything, but he just keeps reading everyone's minds. Or no, first he goes to the library and he asks for books about mind reading, and they tell him to go to the fiction section. And he's like, "No, not if this isn't a story. I need this." So then he goes to sit and he just keeps reading everyone's minds to the point where he like yells everyone to be quiet, even though no one else is talking. So he just looks like wild.
But so he ends up telling Jennifer.
Not yet, but the next like that football star guy comes in and calls him, like he says, Merlin Jones is the campus creep, which causes them to get into a fight, and he like knocks the football star over, who like knocks the dominoes of like the bookshelves over.
Yeah.
But then in the next scene, Merlin Jones is at work. Like he works at like this like very hip like
diner.
Yeah, like a Happy Days like esque diner type deal. But the judge is there, and the judge is eating. And this is where he almost blows his cover because he's like talking about how he can like read everyone's minds. Not really, but he's like, "Oh, the judge just said this," but he didn't really say it. So Jennifer doesn't know what he's talking about. But Merlin does at this point read the judge's mind about the judge is talking about how he has a career in committing crimes and his intention to do more crimes, including murder. So Merlin is like, "Holy cow! The judge is a murderer.
Mhm.
He committed this robbery, he committed this jewel heist, and he's trying to commit murder."
Mhm.
But like, who's going to believe this dude that he read this guy's mind or whatever? Um, so this causes him to like spill his like food onto the judge, who thinks it's like retaliation for him taking away his license, but really he's like,
Yeah.
no, you're gonna kill somebody.
Yeah.
Um,
And he feels like he's got the perfect job to be able to do it because it'd be a big cover up.
yep, because he's the judge.
Yeah.
Who's gonna blame the judge? Um, so then Merlin goes to the police to try to give them tips, but they don't believe him. Um, once they said that it's the judge, they're like, you have no case.
Mhm.
So then everyone thinks that he's just trying to get even with the judge. But then Merlin, at this point, like this is where you were talking about, he decides that he's going to confide in Jennifer, and he gives her like different tests. He's like, "Think what you want me to do." And it was like, "Hold my hand" or "Kiss me" or whatever. So Jennifer ends up believing him. But then when he's like, "Oh, it's the judge," she's like, "It's not the judge. You're just running out of this traffic.
Yeah.
Or your license is getting taken away." So Merlin's like, "All right, fine. I'm going to do my own investigation." Um, but him and Jennifer sneak over to the judge's house,
Mhm.
dressed up as plumbers. Because like they hear him talking about how like he has to like call the plumber or something.
Mhm.
So he like sneaks, like they use that data to like dress as plumbers, sneak into the house. They sneak past the maid, and they're like going through this dude's desk to try to find evidence.
Mhm.
And the only evidence that they find is they find a bunch of books all about crime. They find like a bunch of like literary books about committing different crimes.
Mhm.
Um, so they get out of there before they get caught. And then the next scene, the judge, who clearly likes this restaurant a lot, or maybe it's the only restaurant in town, I don't know. Whatever. He's back there, and Merlin is his waiter, and he's like trying to gather more info. He's like lingering around really long, trying to gather as much information as he can. Um, he thinks that Gloria Mundy must be an accomplice, but we'll learn later what that is. Um, and then the judge asks for peach pits, but really he's like thinking about how he could use um, peach pits as a murder weapon. Um, which at this point Merlin's like, I got this. I'm going back to the police. Um, at this point he admits that he can like he read the judge's mind, and that he broke into the judge's house to investigate. He convinces the police chief that he can read his mind. They end up like doing like tests again to prove that it's him. So they're like, "Oh well, we're just gonna use you real quick in this like lie detector." Like the guy who committed like the bank robbery or whatever is
Mhm.
like testifying, and we can't crack him. We can't crack him. So they like bring Merlin in to like do like this testing, and then with Merlin's help, they're able to like convict this suspect because Merlin can read his mind.
Mhm.
Um, so Merlin is kind of like the hero, but again, like the police like don't want to touch this judge. And when Merlin's like, "All right, I'll go to the newspapers," and they're like, "Well, we'll arrest you for breaking into his house. Like you just admitted that you broke into this dude's house." So he's like, "Fine, I'm gonna go in. I'm gonna dig up this dude's garden because I guess one of his mind reading is like this guy like loves roses, like he's the Queen of Hearts or whatever." And they're like underneath his roses is where like the jewels are gonna be hid,
Yeah.
which is where the Gloria Mundi thing is, because I guess Gloria Mundi is kind of a type of flower or something. I have no idea. But so then um So him and Jennifer take things into their own hands, and they break into the judge's house to dig up the flowers. And then the judge like catches them, and then the police come, and
because the maid or something called.
Yeah,
told him.
Yep. So then, the police come to arrest Merlin and Jennifer for prowling and destroying the judge's rose garden. But at this point, they're like, "Hey, we caught you." Like he finds like a bunch of like peach pits like in like the flower bed, and he's like, like the jewels are inside of this. Like you admitted to this. So then the judge is like, "All right, I have a confession. I have to admit. I have to confess to the whole thing." So the police like get like excited, and they're like, "Hey, we caught this dude." And he's like, "Well, can we at least do this inside?" Like he brings him inside, and they're like, and he's like, "I would like to admit and confess that I am actually the author, Lex Fortis, and I write all of these crime novels. So all the things that I was thinking was something from my most recent crime novel book. Actually, I just finished this other book, and the police and Jennifer are all excited that they finally get to meet the author of this that they're a big fan of." Thoughts on this? Any?
I thought this one had a good conclusion, but I felt like you said, it was like a string of things that was like put together. It seemed like,
Yeah.
I don't feel like this part, it could have been the end of the movie.
Well, there's one more scene, but yeah.
But I don't feel like this led into the next
No, not at all.
Section that
not
well.
At all.
Like it didn't flow well to me.
So he admits that he's actually like this famous author, and he doesn't want like people to know because he's the judge.
Yeah.
And he lives like these separate lives. So it's all like this like big like whatever, miscommunication or misadventures, I guess, like what it's called. But the next morning, conveniently, is Merlin's license suspension trial. So it's been 10 days. And then the judge makes this big speech about giving him the benefit of the doubt, and he reinstates his license, but he does give a whole big speech about not butting into other people's thoughts, like not butting into other people's lives and other people's thoughts. Yeah. And then it is here that we learn that Merlin can no longer hear people's thoughts. Just conveniently, he can't hear people's thoughts anymore. But then this is where I wrote, in true TV movie fashion, the next scene suddenly has nothing to do with this scene whatsoever. Like clearly they tied two misadventures together into one film. And this next scene, they're like in a classroom, and the teacher is teaching about hypnotism. The professor is giving this whole lecture about to the class about hypnotism. They end up selecting Merlin as the experiment, which because clearly the professor doesn't remember that this dude can read minds in the last film, that he chooses him for hypnotism. But he is able to hypnotize Merlin.
But the mind reading thing doesn't.
It's the same dude who caused the mind reading thing.
I know, but the mind reading thing doesn't come up again.
Oh no, it doesn't. No.
So it's not like he didn't.
So this professor,
I feel like it just wore off.
Let me tell you about this professor guy.
That's the only thing that makes sense.
Let me tell you about this professor guy.
He's annoying.
Oh, he's more than annoying. This professor guy, earlier in the film, was Mind talking to himself about how he was going on a date with a girl that wasn't his wife. And, it can't get out. This professor hypnotizes a student. And then, on top of all of this, he goes into his desk and he just pulls a gun out. Like, because that's normal. He just pulls this gun out of his desk. He shoots the gun. The whole class is like, wow, that was loud, except Merlin can't hear anything because he's got hypnotized. He says to Merlin...
He was hypnotized to not hear anything but the professor's voice.
So he shoots a gun next to him.
Right beside his head, beside his ear, to show that he really is hypnotized, because obviously he would have flinched or something with it being that close.
I mean, yeah, I flinched. But so then the professor gives Merlin a potato. And he's like, this is the best apple you've ever had. And he eats the potato and he's like, ooh, this is the best apple. I want this delicious apple again. He gives, and then to prove that this professor is such a great person, he gives a hypnotized Merlin a glass of water. And he was like, it's whiskey. So then homeboy thinks he's drunk.
Yeah.
And then on top of it,
my favorite thing was he kept eating the potato, and he couldn't tell what kind of apple it was, but it was the best apple he had ever had. It was delicious.
So,
but not a red delicious.
But
or a golden delicious. It was just delicious.
Just delicious.
I can't tell what kind it is.
So we have this professor, great guy here, then tells this hypnotized, water-drunk student to go kiss the prettiest girl he's ever seen.
The first
pretty girl he sees.
Pretty girl he sees.
So the homeboy goes and kisses somebody who's not his girlfriend.
Because it was a girl sitting right in front of her. It was the first girl he saw. And I guess he thought she was pretty. But his girlfriend was not very happy about it.
So then after all of this bad things, where he's like the laughing stock of the school, but he doesn't remember, what does Merlin decide to do? Practice hypnosis, whatever you want to call it, hypnotizing. Hypnosis, that's the word I was trying to pronounce. He decides that he's going to practice hypnosis. So he's going to practice on his cat. He convinces his cat, kind of like our cat's sitting right here, he convinces his cat to chase off a dog like he's a noble lion. The cat is dedicated to the bit that he is a noble lion. He is growling. He's is roaring.
Roar like a lion.
So then he's like, all right, I need to hypnotize an animal whose brain is closer to a human's. So he's going to hypnotize the school mascot, which is a chimp. I don't remember the school mascot's name. But in this story here,
I didn't think he was the mascot.
No. Okay.
I thought he was just because he was in a lab. I thought he was like.
I don't know. I think he was the mess.
Whatever he was in a science lab, which I thought it was weird because he was in a psychology lab. But anyway.
And then the tough jock dude who's way too old for this movie from earlier is now just randomly the student who's in charge of the chimp. Whose name is Norman.
Like he was smart. I was very confused about the whole thing.
I mean, you got to be smart to play football, right? You got to.
No, you don't.
I mean, to be able to play for the team or whatever.
Well, supposedly you're supposed to be, but that doesn't mean that's how it goes.
So then, the Norman is that dude's name is mad about Merlin trying to get the chimp. So then, but Merlin is mad that Norman's pushing the chimp around.
Yes, but he got mad because he was feeding it again, and he said, "You're spoiling him."
Yeah.
And he had given him a banana.
He was calling him a monkey, and he's like, "He's a chimp."
Yeah, and the chimp threw the banana peel, and Norm tripped over it like he was on Mario Kart.
So they end up getting into a scuffle, and the lab gets destroyed, and this dude Norman ends up like having a bandage on his head for like the rest of the film. Like he definitely like milks this bandage on his head. But either way, Merlin ends up once again getting brought in front of the judge. But the only trouble he gets in is that he gets told he has to stay away from the chimp. But the judge wants him to come to his house in private later, which we find out is because the judge is intrigued by this hypnotizing, and he wants to write about it in his new book. So he wants to learn about.
People know that he is a writer.
That's right. So he wants to learn about hypnosis for his next Lex Fortis book. But they have like this whole discussion about, can a good person do a bad crime if they're hypnotized or whatever? And they're like, they don't see eye to eye about what a good person can do if they're hypnotized.
Mhm.
So then the judge is like, all right, fine, hypnotize me and tell me to do a crime. And if I don't do it, then we know that this won't work in my book. But if I do it, then we know it'll work in my book or whatever.
Mhm.
So Jones then, not this is a stupid idea, but he successfully hypnotizes the judge. And he
Mhm.
instructs the judge to go steal the chimp from the school
Mhm.
at like a certain time. Go break in and steal the chimpanzee from the school.
Mhm.
So at the perfect time, just like that, the judge
But you're gonna take him home after you steal him,
and you're gonna
and
go to sleep.
nobody's gonna see you. Then you're gonna tuck him in bed.
Yeah, so it was like a harmless crime.
Yeah.
So, but like as commanded, he does go and steal the chimp.
Mhm.
So Merlin and Jennifer are like in shock that clearly a good person can do this bad thing. So they decided that they're
But
gonna.
it was very comical watching him like sneak around.
Yeah, and he was like walking. Yeah.
And he was wearing like a trench coat, but it was like a tweed patterned trench coat. So it wasn't like if you were actually going to commit a crime, I don't think you would have wore something as flashy.
I mean, he's the judge. So.
If you're the judge, I really don't think you're going to wear something as flashy as he had on.
So Merlin and Jennifer want to verify that he's actually going to do this. So they end up like following him. But when they like confront him at the school, he is hypnotized. So he like
straight up lying to him about it.
Yep.
He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. As the monkeys, or not the monkey, the chimp's hand comes out, and he's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
But
he just stuffs it back in his jacket.
He ends up like hitting Merlin to like escape. Like he is bought into this to being hypnotized and doing this thing. So then,
what about if he wasn't really? And he just wanted to like tell Merlin that really it worked.
So Merlin and Jennifer were like, fine, we'll just sneak into this dude's house and nobody saw. So we're just going to return this chimp now that he's asleep. Mm-hmm. So they end up like going and like the two of them are sleeping in bed next to each other.
But no, he didn't just tuck him in his own bed. He literally is in the bed with him. Mm-hmm. And they're just adorable.
So they sneak in, they take the chimp and they go back to the school. But when they get back to the lab, the cops are there waiting because this Norman dude's like figured that it was Merlin. So they arrest
because somebody, I forgot, was it maintenance or security?
Yeah, like the maintenance
that
guy
said
or
whatever. That the chimp was missing, and I knew it was you. And it was just like
they got into a fight about it earlier, so I guess that makes sense.
But why would he be returning it if he took him?
Well, I mean, he was right, but so he gets arrested, and then he's like spending a night in jail, and his girlfriend is like, "You don't look good committing crimes or whatever."
Yeah. And she's like, sorry, I was mad at you. And he's like, why were you mad at me? Because I thought you got caught up in the lab and you were doing another one of your experiments and forgot me in the car.
So they again get put in front of the judge. But the judge doesn't remember being hypnotized. Mm-hmm. So he does not know that he's the real criminal.
Better person than I am.
He doesn't know that he's the criminal.
I know.
So Merlin and Jennifer are like, we're gonna have to hypnotize this dude in the court to make him remember again. So they're like doing like this like snake charmery stuff. They're like singing songs and they're like trying to like hypnotize this dude, and it doesn't work. So they're like, all right, fine, we're gonna call the chimp to testify. So the chimp gets up, walks to the climbs its way over to the
and the guy that was swearing him in was so confused, and the judge is like, we're not swearing in an animal.
And they're doing this whole trying to like have the chimp show that Norman was abusing it, or whatever, being mean to him or whatever. But either way, the judge is like stops the craziness and he finds Merlin guilty. Mm-hmm. And Jennifer is upset about this. Mm-hmm. And she goes on this like whole rant in front of the whole courtroom about how this isn't fair and what fair is, and that the judge is really the guilty one. Mm-hmm. So the judge is like, fine. Merlin, Jennifer, and the chimp come with me into the back room. So there's no one else watching, and they have this whole conversation. Mm-hmm. this is where the judge gets reminded that he actually was the one that stole the chimp while being hypnotized.
Mm-hmm.
And the judge is like, so a good person could do this, or am I a bad person? But either way, he got the premise to his new book.
Mm-hmm.
And then they look over, and the chimp is just like reading a book and smoking a cigar. So they have like this like big laugh about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Merlin Jones song from earlier plays, and the film ends.
Yeah,
That's it.
I mean,
Which one did you like more, the first one or second one?
probably the second one, only for the fact that I thought the bit with the chimp was cute. But I did enjoy both parts of it, but I just don't feel like they flowed well together.
No, not at all.
It seemed like you literally stopped and then started a whole new thing, and it was like,
so
what is this?
I enjoyed the first one better, but I will say this is that so we were in Walt Disney World last week, and we were watching this on like an off night when I wasn't not feeling well, but whatever, that's a sidebar. And my family was there, and they came into this halfway through, and they only watched the second half, but they liked the second half.
Yeah, they were pretty invested.
But I still think that like if they had made a whole entire movie about the first one, but clearly this did well because this warranted a sequel. Because I'm pretty sure The Monkey's Uncle, you can look it up while I'm talking here, is a sequel to this.
I think you're right.
So I know that we'll get into your thoughts and your ratings and the list upon a star in a second, but I'm also pretty sure that our friend Tommy Kirk has been in so many movies. He has been in numerous films. And then this was supposed to be his last one because they had separated with him. But because of the success of this, they had to rehire him for the sequel.
Yeah.
That comes out actually only a year later.
Actually, during the filming of this, he was actually released early from his contract in June of 1963.
Yeah, so we're not going to go into details, but
he actually did, like, in an interview later on, say that, like, I was in a hard place in my life at that point, so I understand why they let me go. So it wasn't like he was bitter about it or anything, and he obviously
he wasn't wrong. He wasn't. I mean, hindsight's 20/20, but he wasn't wrongfully let go.
Yeah, but he obviously came back for a sequel
for one more film. So, like, I mean, he was in what 12 of our last 15 films, or 10 of our last 12 films. Like, he was in
a bunch of them to where I don't even know if is that all he was in? I feel like I don't know. He was in a whole bunch of them.
I mean, we, as you know, if you've been watching along or listening along since the beginning,
he definitely surpassed Fez Parker.
And then even like yes, we were all about Fez Parker. We were all about Moochie.
And Kevin Corcoran was in a few that he wasn't in, but I still think he did more probably then.
But like, and then we
maybe not much more.
We had Fez Parker, and then before Fez Parker, we had the other dude who played like Davy Crockett and all those things. I don't know, that was Fez Parker.
I was gonna say that.
But like the dude from before that was.
Oh yeah, I don't remember.
But like nobody was in as many. Like, I don't think anybody ever is going to be in. Like, Haley Mills wasn't in this many.
What? Well, I was gonna say, what about
Haley Mills was only going to be at 6. I remember that number.
What about the dad from The Parent Trap?
I think he was only in like 4.
No, because I was gonna say he's been in a bunch here lately.
But either way,
he was even in some with Tommy Kirk.
So Tommy Kirk was in so many. So whatever, he gets let go. But the success, they end up doing a sequel the next year, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
Which he'll return for his last one. So for the time being, the long, massive run is over. So go ahead.
You want to know an interesting trivia bit about this?
Yeah.
and this will tie into our ending here. This film was released in the UK as the lower half of a double bill with The Three Lives of Thomasina.
Which is convenient. For foreshadowing. But I'm gonna look up to confirm that the Monkey's Uncle is actually the sequel. But in the meantime, would you like to give us your ratings and all that fun stuff, or whatever else you have to say?
Sure. So IMDb gave this a 6.2 out of 10.
And you?
I gave it a 7 out of 10. It was very comical. I probably would have rated it higher had it felt like the two parts flowed together better. But it was definitely something I could see myself watching again.
It was the best film that we've seen lately.
Yeah, and I don't know, I feel like I watched like a bunch of like older stuff when I was little. Had I found this when I was little, I probably would have watched it multiple times.
It's fun. Yeah. It's cute. Like I said, it's the best that we've watched lately. So it doesn't make your list upon a star. This final Tommy Kirk for a year. No. Does it make your list upon a star? So then what is your list upon a star?
So my list upon a star is 101 Dalmatians, The Parent Trap, Sleeping Beauty, Dumbo, Lady and the Tramp, The Three Caballeros, Moon Pilot, The Shaggy Dog, Peter Pan, and Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, so this was a fun film, more fun than I expected.
Mm-hmm. Does it experiment its way on
Tommy Kirk and Annette Funicello, who's in a bunch of films coming up, and has been in some films. Annette Funicello, standing ovation. Sorry. Side note for our listeners. We were in Walt Disney World last week when I wasn't not feeling well, and we went to watch Muppets
3D.
Muppet Vision 3D before it closes for good, and it's closing soon. We went to see it, and like the whole crowd was so into it, and it got like this big cheer, and it was really nostalgic and awesome. But that's a whole other sidebar. And there's a Net Funicello reference in there. But this does not make my list upon a star. My list upon a star is 101 Dalmatians, Peter Pan, Alice in Wonderland, Babes in Toyland, Pinocchio, Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Sleeping Beauty, Lady and the Tramp, and the Swiss Family Robinson. I will say this: we have not had anything get added to that in a long time. So, what film is going to break these very strong lists that we have? What film is going to knock Alice in Wonderland off your list? Because you're crazy. But speaking of, I don't know if you have any other facts you want to say about this before I dive into what's next.
There wasn't really a lot of facts that I found about it. So
I mean, you were even verifying earlier. Yeah, there's not much going on. So our next, I think
there were some goofs, but I don't really know like if they were good goofs.
Yeah. Well, you know what? That's okay. We can save them. But
I did say that the judge obviously had no lenses in his glasses frames, which I just assumed.
Maybe I don't either.
I just assumed they did that so that there wouldn't be a glare with filming.
It's true.
So I didn't really think of that being a goof.
Obviously that we made it to 7.
Oh, there was one, and I'm surprised you didn't catch it because you're like one of the only weird people that I know that knows all of the presidents, and what number of presidents they were. Because you do that when we go to Disney. You count them down.
I'm a president.
But the girl in the library is overheard reading about Zachary Taylor being the 11th man to be president of the United States, but he was in fact the 12th president.
The 12th.
And you didn't catch that.
Taylor's the 12th, yeah.
He obviously wasn't feeling his best during their trip, so.
No, I was not. But speaking of numbers, conveniently, this was our 70th deep dive, which I think is wild. But for our 71st deep dive, we're moving over to June of 1964. Mm-hmm. And that is a film that caught us all off guard, I think. And it is a film titled The Three Lives of Thomasina, which is why you mentioned that earlier. Mm-hmm. It is a film Yeah, we'll talk about it next time. But again,
talk about it next
we're on Spotify, we're on YouTube, we're on Instagram. We have the email address. We would love to hear from you. Thank you for your thumbs up. Thank you for hanging out with us through 70 films. If you've watched all these films with us, we would love to hear which one's your favorite and why the correct answer is 101 Dalmatians. But 70 films. We'd be able to retire if we were a year for all these films. But either way, we'll see you next time for the 3 Lives of Thomasina.
Thanks for deep diving the magic.
Bye.
Bye.